All right. Hello, my name is Noah Garland, and I'm currently doing an interview on Dr. Tramposh for the Irish Ensemble. Can I please get a small description about what you do here at Crane?
Sure. I'm the viola professor, but I also teach the Irish Ensemble and the Crane Mariachi.
All right. Thank you so much. Let's get to the interview questions, shall we? Firstly, when did you begin to study Irish music?
I started studying Irish music in, I'd say, around 2010-ish. Um, and I spent my last sabbatical, which was 9 years ago. I spent most of that year in Ireland working with various teachers, mostly Matt Cranich and Johnny McCarthy, and spending a lot of time at festivals and in sessions in different places in Cork and in Baltimore and Dublin and like Guido and a few other places. So yeah, that was most of my study has happened in Ireland, and then there are also a few places that I go in the U.S. to study. One of which is the Catskills, which has a couple of Irish festivals that have classes and things like that. So
All right, let me finish my notes here, and then move on to the next question. You said Catskills, right?
yeah.
Okay. All right. Next, when did you realize you had a strong professional interest in Irish music and Irish ensembles?
So I think I just in 2007 I took a trip to Ireland to play classical music in a trio with a cellist and a pianist, and just had the opportunity to hear a bunch of Irish music while I was there, and I thought it was really great. So I wanted to try and do it. I also thought it would be a great thing to bring to Crane as a non-classical type of music to be offering, because I think it's important to have diversity in the types of
Yes,
music that we offer.
that's definitely fair. Now going back to what you said within the first question, who are some mentors or artists that inspired you to keep performing and keeping the Irish music alive for you?
Well, Maura O'Keefe, that's spelled Maire O'Keefe, um, is an amazing fiddle player who's a good friend of mine, and very has been an inspiration, along with Matt Cranich, um, and also Benedict Kohler, Koehler, and his wife Hilary Farrington, who live in Vermont. I should have mentioned I also go to Vermont frequently to play in sessions. So
Yep.
those are some of my mentors.
Nice. Do you have any memorable performances or sessions that you've had in your lifetime that you'd be willing to share?
Um, I mean, there's been some really amazing ones. I mean, I don't know if I could pick like one certain one, but I think going to Vermont, the session in Montpelier, Vermont, is probably my favorite place to go and play tunes. It's just amazing. They're all incredible players, and the music is always great. So
Nice. All right, we're going to move on to the second big question. When did Irish Ensemble start at Crane, and what was the process of starting an ensemble like Irish Ensemble?
when did it start at Crane? I forgot to look that up. I don't know that I have great notes because I'm only listing 2018, and I know that's not true.
It's okay.
Maybe it is. Actually, 2018 might have been the first time. Um, Spring of 2018.
As I say, if you think it was earlier, you could just give a general like.
No, I'm pretty sure it was spring of 2018.
Okay.
Because I think that was right after our sabbatical.
Got it.
So, and in terms of an ensemble, it's not really an ensemble in the sense that we usually think of an ensemble.
Yeah.
Irish music is not usually played in an ensemble, so to
Yeah.
speak. You know, like there are a few people who have bands that are usually, you know, 4, 5 people, sometimes less, sometimes 2, sometimes 3, sometimes solo, and who go around and play shows, but it's not that's not the most common thing. The most common thing is to go to a session and just there's, you know, 10 people who show up and play music. And you just play whatever you want. You know, like people kind of tend to know the same tunes. You know, there's a lot of session tunes. So what we do in the ensemble is we just learn tunes, and then we try and have like little session type experiences by me inviting in some local people who actually also play Irish music to play with us during our class, and that's about the best we can do. I used to take the students to play like in McDuff's, but there's too many people in the group now. We can't really fit anywhere. Like there's no bar downtown that we could really fit 23, 24 people with me in in a circle. So we just have had to abandon that, unfortunately, which is kind of sad. But yeah, it's not really an ensemble in that sense. So
I'm sorry to hear that. It is definitely cool to see an ensemble like this that isn't traditional in any capacity.
Right? Yeah, it's not.
It's
an ensemble.
It sounds really cool. Next question. What did Irish Ensemble first look like at Crane during spring 2018? Was there a lot of interest, or did it take a few semesters or years to grow?
I had like 15, 16 students in it the first time. This is the biggest. I usually range around 18, 20 students. This year I have 23. There's a few more. No, it was definitely, people were pretty excited the very first time I offered it and came flocking in. So.
That's actually really amazing to just immediately put a new type of music out there and everyone's interested in it already. All right. Final question for this big question. How possible is it for a group of students to create a cultural ensemble like this one? Do you think it'd be possible, or is it something that would have to be taking a couple years to curate?
Well, like I said, so Irish music is, unless you're the person who's going to go out on the stage and play shows, Irish music is social music. The whole point of it is you go, so like last year my partner and I went on a cruise to Alaska, and the cruise left from Seattle. So we met our friends in Seattle, and there was a session at a local pub, and I just went to that session, you know, like, because that's what you do. It's social music. You go, you meet people, you talk, you know, maybe you have a beer or not, depending, you know, how you feel about that, and you play tunes, you know, whatever tune you know that they play, you play along. If you don't know the tune, you just sit and listen, you know. And it's social music, so it's not in terms of asking like could students do it, what really all that's required is that you know a few tunes and go to a session. You know, like, but in terms of making like a band, that's a whole different thing. That's like a whole different beast. And the people who play in the bands are usually people who grew up playing Irish music, and like, you know, and then they go to, there are actually colleges that you can go to in Ireland that teach, have degrees in, you know, Irish traditional music, and so that's a whole like separate thing, but that's not something that I do, and it's not the focus of my program. The focus of my program is to give students a handful of tunes. We'll typically learn 20, 25 tunes in a semester, that they can then go out to a session, and if someone invites them to start a tune, they can start a tune, you know, and they're ready to do that. And there's been a number of my alumni who, there's quite a large number of them who still play Irish music, just are out in the world playing Irish music whenever they get the chance, you know. That's my goal.
Nice.
My goal is not to have them be amazing or anything. My goal is for them to spark an interest that they can then follow. And if they happen to be in Seattle, they can go to a session in Seattle. If they're down in Long Island, they can find a session in Long Island, you know. So.
That's just keeping the music alive, pretty much.
Just as a community, as a social thing for them to do, you know, as a social outlet. Basically, that's what Irish music is. It's like it serves, I think, a lot of the same function as like orchestra, chorus, and band do in high school. It's not so much about students learning how to play instruments really well. It's about them having a social environment in which they work together to like make something beautiful. And it's exactly the same as that. It's just for grown-ups.
Got it.
Although young people do sometimes go, it just depends.
I'm gonna say probably not to pubs at that point.
Well, most pubs have food in the United States, and so they're restaurants, and so like people can bring their if you had a teenager and you wanted them to play in a session, you can bring them.
Right.
And as long as you're there too, it's not a problem. So that does happen. I've seen it happen before, like in Orlando. There's a session I go to in Orlando sometimes.
Cool. All right. How do you properly teach an Irish ensemble through an institution like the Crane School of Music?
Well, I teach the ensemble the way that every Irish music festival in Ireland teaches tunes, which is to say by rote. You show up, they teach you a tune, and they go through it phrase by phrase, and you just work on it until you can play it, and then you record it, and then you go home and practice it every day. That's how tunes are learned, and the importance of keeping that and not giving students sheet music is it forces them to listen to the style as well, right? So you have to absorb the style. The most horrifying thing to me in the world is to go, because I often go and do high school visits for recruiting, and sometimes they'll be playing an Irish jig, and it's just the most non-Irish sounding thing you've ever heard in your entire life, because they're just playing it straight from the page, not realizing that a jig is lightly swung, right? It's mildly swung. It's not swung a lot. It's mildly swung, but they're playing it like completely straight, so it sounds like da 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 dee da 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 dee da instead of da 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 da. Like and it just it's so hard for me, because it's like there are 65 or 64 million Irish people in the United States. There's only 6 million of them in Ireland, by the way. 64 million of them in the United States, and there are sessions everywhere. There are probably 1 million hours worth of recordings on YouTube that you can listen to. It's not hard. But so I try to really very much, we do it through listening, we do it through imitation, and hopefully in that way the students are absorbing what it's supposed to sound like, what their tone, because the tone is different, and the way that you make sound especially on the violin, is different in a fiddle context than it is in classical music. So that's how I teach it.
I'm blanking, I'm sorry. I was gonna say something, but then I'm sorry. Moving on to the next question. Were there any sacrifices that you need to take while doing and while teaching an Irish ensemble within the institutional system at Crane?
Sacrifices. Well, no, I mean, there are always issues with our faculty loads, with what we're allowed to teach and what we're not allowed to teach. So there could come a day when they don't want me to teach it anymore if I have too many viola students in my studio, for example, which I think would be a real mistake. But no, I mean, in terms of me, like personally, I end up having a lot to practice, because I'm now playing 3 different genres of music that are 100% different from each other, and so I have viola on classical music, and then I have this for Irish music, and I also have this for mariachi, and they are different. The way that you play the violin for Irish music is very different than the way that you play it for mariachi, and I also have to play the vihuela and the guitarrón, and I really should be practicing the whistle as well, which I'm terrible at. It's like, so there's just, for me, I guess the biggest thing is just not having enough time to actually do what I would like to do on each of the instruments.
Got it.
So I suppose that my time is really what I sacrifice. So
Yeah. Next question. How long does it take the ensemble to generally get ready for a session?
Well, so there are people at different levels in the ensemble. I don't require any experience to play. So I have people playing secondaries, and what I do is I divide the group into 5 different small groups for the exams, and they get some chances to practice within their small group. We do sectionals, essentially, whatever you want to call them. So there's days where I reserve 5 rooms, and everybody goes into a different room and practices their tunes together. When we come back, we will be having our second exam, and the Friday when we come back is our concert, which is going to be a session for part of Wellness Week. So we're going to be in the Commons on Friday afternoon at 5. Um, just playing some tunes, and people can come and eat cookies and like play games, and it should be kind of fun. But for that for that day, I think we'll have maybe half an hour's worth of music learned.
Got it.
You know, it takes a while when you're learning by rote. And the thing is that each of those groups performs at a different speed. Some of them have to go very slowly because they're less familiar with their instrument, you know. Yeah. And others of them have been fiddling. There's 2 people who've been fiddling for their entire lives, you know, and their group likes to go nice and fast. So everybody, you know, I let people self-select what speed of group they wanted to be in, and for the most part, that really works out very well. Cool. So what I'm going to do for that concert is feature individual groups of those groups and let them play tunes at their speed. And so we may actually be playing some of the tunes more than once. I'm also going to invite some of the alumni not alumni, but current students who have done Irish ensemble before to come and play some tunes with me so that we can have different tunes, and you know, and I might invite my community member friends as well to come and play so that we can have different stuff. So it's to answer your question, I guess this is a roundabout way of answering your question. Like, it's not like we have 60 minutes worth of, you know.
Yeah.
It's just a process of the whole semester going by, and we just add tunes as we go.
Yeah.
We're also looking forward to we're going on a field trip to Burlington to go to Montpelier to go to that session that I like to go to. They're going to have a special session for us on a different day in a different location because it's going to have to be a big place.
Yeah.
So we've got our 23 people, and then they've got like a dozen people or so. I mean, it's just going to be chaos. It's going to be absolute cacophony. But we're piling into 3 buses on a Saturday morning, driving to Montpelier, playing music for 3 hours, and driving home, you know.
Cool.
But so by April 5th, which is the day we're doing that, we should have all the tunes from the first 2 tests plus at least a few more. So we'll have, you know, a decent number of tunes that we can play at that session, you know, and then the fact that there'll be 12 or so other people there playing tunes means that the students in my group will just sit when there's a tune playing that they don't know and just listen, you know, and they can record if they want to and then learn those tunes later. So as kind of a funny story, when I was getting ready for my sabbatical, there is, in Cork, there is a university that offers a 1-year master's in ethnomusicology with a focus in Irish traditional music for $12,000. Which is insanely cheap for a master's degree. You know,
like, from what I've seen, it's definitely a lot cheaper than
Well, Europe is just generally much more reasonable about higher education. But anyway, so I was like, yeah, you know, I could do that. I could go. I could get in my 1-year sabbatical. I could just have this, you know, this degree, this master's in ethnomusicology, and then I thought to myself, well, okay, I have 3 degrees already. If I do that, I'm going to be spending my time writing papers and reading articles, or I can spend my time sitting in pubs, drinking beer, and recording people while they play, and then practicing those songs during the day. Which of those things sounds like more fun?
I'd say the performance, definitely.
Yeah. So I was like, I don't need another degree. You know, like I have plenty of degrees. I don't need any more degree. I don't need to be writing papers about Irish, you know, like I'm fine with just being a performer, a practitioner of Irish music, and not a studier of Irish music. So anyway, that's kind of where I'm coming from. But going on with your questions.
Thank you. We got one final question. Have there been any memorable stories with the Crane Irish Ensemble that you would be willing to share?
Nothing really memorable. Well, there was. We last time that I tried taking the ensemble off campus, the place that I found that was kind of big enough and receptive was the Elks Club. Which unfortunately, the reason why it didn't really work out is because it's a members only club, so no one could come and listen, right? Except for the Elks Club members. And the day that we showed up to do our first session, there were probably like 10 or 12 people. It's a kind of a small bar with a big front room. And we were in the front room, and there were like 10 or 12 people there, and they were absolutely silent while we were playing, which is like so awkward for Irish music. Like what you expect is people talking, like people are like laughing and socializing, and like it's background music, like it's not. And then it was just so awkward. We were all just like, oh my god, this is so weird.
Let's say it seemed more like a level.
Yeah, and then, exactly. And then some guy tried to buy drinks for everybody in the ensemble, and I was like, no, you can't do that. These people are not of age, just no. And also, this is a school activity, so no. But it was very funny. Other than that, I think my most memorable experiences have been, I've done the trip to Ireland like 5 times or so. 5. This might be my 6th time taking a student group for the short-term study abroad course, and that's always where we have the most fun. Like I mean, that's really where I get to watch the students experience Ireland, and many of them have never left the United States before, so it's like a brand new, a whole new thing for them, and that's always the most fun. Is just kind of chaperoning them around and showing them all the cool things about Cork and letting them experience what it's like to be inside an actual Irish pub, which is kind of a special and different feeling from, even from an American Irish pub. Like they're just never the same. The Irish ones tend to be super, super small and like covered with stuff, there's just like, because they've been open for 200 years, so they've got pictures and like, it's just, it's a lot of fun. And even like there's one pub called the Cobblestone Pub that's in Dublin that is like the most famous place to go and hear Irish music in Ireland, and it is tiny. Like the room that the musicians sit in a space about this big.
Jeez.
So there's like there'll be 10 or 12 people crammed in there, and everyone's like trying to find space, and then around them, I mean, there's like another next to that area, like, so where this wall is would be like a passage about this wide from the front door that goes along there, and then it opens up a little bit where the bar is, but I mean not by much. Like, so when you go in there, it is always just like you are sardined in trying to listen to music, so it's they're always tiny and very historic and beautiful, and but Ireland's been having a lot more awareness about alcoholism in the last decade or so, so they've tightened up their like drunk driving patrols and taking away people's license, and and they also raised the price of alcohol in pubs a lot. So beer and cider are still fairly cheap, but like whiskey is really expensive. And so the idea was to make the hard liquor a lot more expensive there, and they are only allowed to sell it in strict one shot, like they have a sizing thing that they have to use, like you can't get like a tall pour or something,
or
what I mean?
A double
like,
shot
you can order a double shot, but then it's just two exactly double shots, right?
Got it.
And they also but so as a result of that, and which I think is good, alcoholism is lowering in Ireland, but it also means that people aren't going to pubs, and so a lot of pubs have closed. The pandemic killed a lot of them also, because they just didn't have the money to like weather that storm. And so there's not as many sessions happening in pubs anymore, which is sad. But there are also ceilidh dances, and that's also a place where you'll see Irish music. Ceilidh dances are a little bit like contra dances. Do you know what a contra dance is?
I don't.
It's like square dancing,
where
someone calls the do-si-do your partner or whatever, like they tell you what to do. Ceilidh dances are like that, except there's no collar. You're just supposed to know the forms, right?
Oh no.
And it's Irish music is just Baroque music that never stopped being Baroque music, right? And Ceilidh dances are essentially just Baroque dances that have been danced ever since in Ireland. And it is so much fun to go to those and have somebody who knows what they're doing just throw you around, And but there's always live music, people playing tunes for those too. So it's really cool. I enjoy that very much. That's usually one of the highlights of the trip for the students.
Yeah, it sounds really cool. It's definitely something. All right. Well, that's all the questions I have for today. Thank you so much for doing this interview,
Yeah, you're welcome.
I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much.